And now it's time for Blossoms of My Life Radio with your host, Ramona Trevino. Ramona is a teacher, a pastor, a 3-time author, and radio host since February 2018, helping people share their but God moment and helping people see and be the blossoms in life. This program is a production and sponsored by Blossoms of My Life Radio Ministry and listeners like you. Now here's Ramona.
Hi, this is Ramona. Thanks so much for joining us. This is my guest, Alanna. Hi, Alanna.
Hi, Ramona. How are you today?
I'm doing good. So I met Alanna on a trip to Mexico. We went on our your first little mission trip, and we went to go build houses, right, Alanna?
Yes, we did. It was a wonderful experience.
It was. It was a pretty amazing experience. And, you know, God had some other plans with our relationship. We continued on our relationship, and then it took us to the point to where you took some pictures for me, and that ended up being the title of my second book and cover, and now the title of this radio show. So, I mean, that was exciting in itself. I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about what that was like when we came up with the title for the book.
Well, once I had left the orange groves where we had done your photo shoot and got home and come back to my house, I was up all night going through the photos, and this one particular photo just would not leave my mind. I was just completely drawn back to it repeatedly over and over. So that morning I'd woken up, you were already up, sitting at my breakfast bar, and I presented the picture to you, and I kind of walked out of the room for a minute to go do something else, and when I entered back into the room, you had this look of just absolute joy with almost a tear getting ready to flush down your cheek.
I remember.
You looked at me, and you said, "This is it. This is the title of my book." And I kind of sat there a little speechless, because that was not the intentions of what the photo shoot was about at the time. It was for the website. And from there, you said, "Blossoms of My Life," because it was a cherry blossom tree. And we both cried and hugged each other, and it was just a very cool, touching, magical moment for sure.
And I remember too, because the night before I had told you that I knew what the book was going to be about, but I was still struggling with the title, how to get it started. And I remember I was telling you that I had been praying for this title and what to title it. So that's why I think when I saw the picture and then hearing your story, how you couldn't sleep, I knew that God had kind of answered your prayer, my prayer, all of it together. And he knew what he was going to do, because then I went on to do some research on what blossoms mean and the regeneration of everything and how it comes to be. And I just think the whole thing was pretty cool.
Yes, it was God's plan for sure. It all started from a trip down to Mexico.
Right? All of a sudden, sometimes that. So the other thing is I just blessed by the time that we got to spend together. And there was a story that you shared with me that just warmed my heart. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to interview you today, because a lot of times women our age, I'm single. I've been through some rough, relationships, couple marriages that just didn't work out right for whatever reason. But you shared your love story with me, and it just encouraged me. It just made me feel so warm, just knowing that, there is people out there that God has for us. And I just was wondering if you could spend some time today to just kind of share about how you and Rook met.
Okay, as you had just said about yourself, I was over 40 and I'd never been married, had been engaged a few times, but, it just weren't the right men for me at the time, and definitely were lessons. I believe everybody is put in your life for a reason, to teach you a lesson. And from there, I just focused mainly on my son and whatnot, and find a healthier me. And from there, I was 40 years old, and I was keeping my faith. And I had met with a mutual friend that was in town from California, and we went out and, catching up and whatnot. And he asked why I was still single. At this point, I had been single for 6 years. And I said, it's kind of, by choice, focusing on my son and kind of finding myself again. And he says, I don't get it. You're such a wonderful catch. And I said, well, thank you for that, and he goes, well, you know what? I got this guy. And I said, boy, have I heard that a lot.
Right? Both of us.
And I had dated in the 6 years, but nothing, just going on dates, and it just didn't pan out. And so he started laughing. He goes, no, seriously. He's been as single as long as you. He's never been married just like you. And I just think you guys kind of have the, same outlook of what you're looking for. And I said, oh, I don't know. And he says, why don't you guys could meet. And come to find out, he lives 3,000 miles away from me. So I'm on the East Coast, and he's on the West Coast. And I kind of left there going, I don't know about this. Well, one thing led to another. A week had gone by, and his friend had mentioned something to him. And he hit me up privately through a PM on Facebook. And we started chatting a little bit here and there. And it was probably a good month before we actually heard each other's voice for the first time. And so we started talking on the phone regularly. And at this point, we're probably a month and a half in it. And, I'm really finding peace within him, within his words, as he was from me later on, I found out. And then he said, well, why don't I buy you a ticket to come out and meet me? And, of course, I'm very hesitant about that.
Of course. I know that's just kind of scary to go across the United States to meet someone you've never met. Yeah.
But on the other hand, I'm thinking to myself, I've known this friend of mine who put this man out there, and he would never put me in danger in any way. So I said, and they lived out there. So I was like, okay, I'll just stay with them. I'm not going to stay with a total stranger. And so I get to the airport, and he picks me up. And from there, we go down to Huntington Beach, and we have our first date. And if anyone knows me, I'm a bit of a jokester, and I like to kind of, play jokes on people. And so we leave this little restaurant, and we are riding beach cruisers is what they call bicycles out here. You kind of ride them on the beach. On the East Coast, I didn't know what that meant, so learned that word or term. And we're riding along, and he's just talking, and he just wouldn't stop. And I liked it, but then another part of me was laughing inside, oh my God, this guy won't stop talking. So I took the front wheel of the beach cruiser, and I rammed it into his, and we both fell onto the sand of the beach, and we just started laughing so hard, like we were best friends and we knew each other forever. And he looked at me and he goes, oh my God, I cannot believe you just did that. He goes, but I love that. He goes, that was so fun and just so
spontaneous.
You putting yourself out there. Yeah. So from there, I stayed another few days, obviously because, I had a 17-year-old son at the time, and so he was with his dad, so I needed to get back home. And from that point on, we carried on it was just about 2 years, long distance.
Hold that thought right there, Alanna. I'm going to take a short break, and then we're going to get back right to where you're talking about as far as getting finishing up the trip, and then the 2 weeks that. Just hold that thought where you're at, okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Will do. You're welcome.
Hi, this is Ramona Trevino. Thank you for listening today. If you would like to share your story, a book, or a ministry that you're involved with, feel free to email me at ramona@blossomsofmylife.org. Again, that's Ramona, RAMONA, @blossomsofmylife.org. Thank you again. Be a blossom in someone's life. Now, let's get back to our guest. This is Ramona. Thank you. And again, I have Alanna on the phone right now. And Alanna's a good friend of mine, and she's actually the person that helped me with the photograph that's for my book, Blossoms of My Life, and now the radio station name. And so I'm introducing her because she had some blossoms in her life, just as she's been the blossom in my life for many different things that are going on in my life right now. And so she's just talking about her love story, which was just intrigued me when I met her and we had some time together to talk. And so, Alanna, can you pick up where we left off?
Yes. From there, I had said, I needed to get back to the East Coast. And for the next almost 2 years, we carried on our relationship. Long distance, 3,000 miles away. We made, an oath to each other that we would talk every day, that we would not go more than 6 to 7 weeks without each other as long as one of us could get to the East Coast or the West Coast. And we held up to that bargain.
And for that, how long was that? How many months did you guys do that for?
Almost 2 years.
Wow.
2 years almost. Yep. It was not easy. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It was not easy, but we were in it to win it. We knew we were both over 40. We had waited a very long time for something like this to be presented into each other's lives, and we just didn't want to give up. And we were going to put in the work that needed to be done to make this relationship. I guess a wonderful word to use is to, blossom into something wonderful.
Okay.
And that's exactly what it did. And son...
How old was your son at the time?
He was 16 when it had almost cresting on to 17.
And how did that go with him?
Yeah. He had never been around another man since my separation that he knew that I was interested in, because I was a very protective mother, to the point someone could hurt me, but they were not going to hurt my child type of thing. If it was to end, I wanted to make sure it was going to be healthy enough before I brought my child into the picture. And then when I felt like Darren, he goes by the name of Rookie, was the right one for me, I wasn't just going to accept that. I needed to hear those words from my son also, because this wasn't just about me.
Right.
I have a child, and I've always lived by, if my son doesn't care for you as much as I want it, I can't go that route.
Right.
I just wasn't that woman. But so they ended up meeting. This was after quite a while. And I remember a particular moment with my son. We were dropping Rookie off at the airport after a Christmas trip he had made out here. And he had given my son a pair of white Oakley glasses that he had wanted for Christmas. And he had those on, and we all get out of the car to get him, get his bags out and whatnot. And my son is not, he's not a very emotional person. He really holds his emotions in. And I saw this little tear rolling down his cheek, but he thought he had wiped it away.
Oh.
Before I'd seen it. And so I kind of let it go. I didn't want to embarrass him or anything. And he, of course, had these white glasses on to hide the emotion. So we give our hugs goodbye. And my son and I get back in the car. And we're, on the highway headed home. And I said, "Is everything okay, bud? Anything you'd like to talk about?" And he said, "Mom, I really like him a lot."
Oh.
He's like, "He's everything that I've ever wanted for you."
Wow.
And he said, "I've watched you hurt. I've watched you cry over men, over situations. You didn't think I was watching or understood, but I did." And he said, "This man brings happiness back into your life I haven't seen in a very long time." And that right there was the selling point of how I really knew it was God's plan, not only for myself, not only for Rookie, but also for my son. Because everything you do in life is, your children, they see it. You're the role model.
Right. It was like God was kind of confirming for you what you were waiting for, because you knew you wanted to have your son's approval with everything too.
Yep. No, for sure. And then from there, Rookie had come home. It was just about Easter. So all this relationship started in 2011, and in 2000, just cresting into 2013, Rookie had come out to the East Coast, and anyone that knows me knows I'm an avid hiker, and we were out on a hike, Rookie and I, and we had come down to this little creek, and he had pulled out a blanket, and we were just going to kind of sit down. And in Vermont, it's absolutely beautiful, peaceful, quiet in the woods. And he asked me, he said, will you go find a rock to help hold the blanket down? And I'm like, well, that's kind of odd. I said, there's no wind today, but I'm like, okay, whatever. So I go over and I get a rock, and by the time I turn around, he had in that time set rose petals at the top of the stream that were flowing by as I turned around, rose petals all over this blanket, and he was down on one knee.
Oh, my goodness.
And I was just absolutely speechless. I did not see this coming. But yeah, so I said yes, obviously.
Obviously, right.
And
how do you say no to that, right?
Yep, it was just so amazing and beautiful. And to this day, back in Vermont where I'm from, there's a tree right by that little stream that has a heart with our initials and the date that he proposed to me. And so when we do go home, we do try to go back to that spot that kind of put it all together. So it was just a magical moment.
Right. And then I know in a whole nother story, which we should probably talk about it in another interview, which would be awesome. And I know we're going to be talking to Rook later on, and hopefully you can join us. But, there was some other reasons of why God brought the two of you together, because he was in a horrific accident.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was. It was not too much longer after he had proposed. I was with my son. I was on the East Coast. Rookie was out here, and I had received a call from my sister-in-law, and it was a very scary call that Rookie had been in an accident. He was out training on his bicycle with another rider friend of his, and he had hit a parked vehicle, and it was a very, very scary time, and I couldn't get a flight out fast enough. This was probably about 5 o'clock at night. I received the call, and I could not get to Rookie's bedside until the next day it was probably noon, and it felt like a lifetime. And
I can't even imagine, because he was pretty much unconscious. Wasn't he in a coma at that point? Induced?
He was unconscious. He in a coma. Wasn't able to breathe on his own, in ICU, and it didn't look good.
Right, I remember.
So once I got on the plane, I just prayed for the two legs that I had, meaning changing planes. That's what we call it.
Right, right.
That when I changed airports, I had just asked God, if you need to take him, I will accept that to the best that I can. But please let me say goodbye. That's all I ask. And so by the time I landed at LAX, I looked down at my phone and I hadn't got anything, and I thanked God. I said, thank you.
No news, right? So it didn't have to be bad news. No news at all. So that's good.
Yep, no news. So I had known he was still here. And I got to Inland Valley in Wildomar, California, and walked in to the ICU, and it was something
The images, I know. I remember you sharing that with me. The images of him just being there. It's not the Darren that you remembered.
No, it was very, very scary, very overwhelming. And from that point on, it was just every day we never knew what it was going to bring. He was in ICU for about 5 weeks with some days we just didn't know. He had blood transfusions, just was slipping away. It was just extremely, extremely scary, and all I could do was pray. And of course, I had no family out here.
Right, you were by yourself with him. And then, how long before he knew that you were there?
Oh goodness, it was a few weeks because when he woke up.
Okay.
I think you'd have to ask him when you interview him.
Okay.
That maybe when he
could
was
subconsciously
out, he
hear
had
you. I remember.
Yeah, so that might be a good question for him. That maybe when I did get there that day, February 26th of 2013.
We're coming up on that anniversary too.
Well, that's when the 25th is when it happened, and I got there on the 26th. But yeah, that's just a date we don't ever forget, for sure, and not in a bad way. Now that he's overcome all his obstacles and he's here, we celebrate that day.
And you ended up getting married.
Yeah, so he went from the trauma center at Inland Valley for 5 weeks. From there, he went to Loma Linda Rehab. And when we were at Loma Linda Rehab, we were there because he had a spinal injury and he was paralyzed from the chest down. And we didn't know if he'd ever walk again. It was one of those injuries that basically they tell you fully recover, you partially recover, or you never recover. It's a waiting game.
Right.
So we went through that, and it was one day we were in his room after coming back from one of his physical therapies that he said, let's get married. And I wasn't about it at that time because I just didn't know if he was thinking clearly, and I just didn't want to make a bad decision because we had planned a wedding.
Right.
We were supposed to get married. But I just didn't know if he was thinking clearly. And so we sat there. I sat on his bed and we talked, and he told me, he says, no, I really want to do this. He goes, I feel like God put you in my life because you are my angel. And he said, he's like, when I was laying in that bed, I thought I was going to lose my house, my job, and you were my girlfriend at the time. And he said, when I finally had come through some of the bad parts, I realized you didn't go nowhere. And I thanked God for my angel every day. And he goes, and you're still here. And he's like, I want to do this. I want to get married now. So we did. We got married in the Healing Garden at Loma Linda Hospital. The nurses got us a cake, and one of the other nurses, they videoed and took pictures.
Awesome.
And we were the first couple ever to be married at the hospital.
Praise God.
So Rookie was still in his wheelchair. He was still recovering. I had a couple family members that had flew out. He had a couple family members that had flew out, and it was a wonderful day.
Awesome.
It really was a wonderful day, and
thank you.
It was just the way it was,
Yeah,
it was God's plan. The whole circle of all of this was all God's plan, and we're grateful every day.
And there's so much more that goes with it, right? Afterwards, you keep seeing the things that goes on, and our time's just about up right now, Alanna. Yep. And I just thank you for sharing that story, because it's just a precious love story, and I never would have known about Alanna other than we met each other on a trip to Mexico to build houses, and then she ends up telling me she's a photographer and she takes photos for me, and then that turns out to be the title of my second book, along with this radio show, the title of this, and so I'm wondering, Alanna, how can people get a hold of you for your photography services?
Well, I do have a Facebook page, Pink Heaven Photography. And basically, you can go under my name, Alanna Lynch Sorenson is what I go under on Facebook. And right there will be my page. You can click on it. My phone number's on there. You're welcome, to email me. And, yeah.
Can you spell your name, Alanna?
Spell it, yes. Alanna.
And then your whole name for your Facebook.
Okay, LYNCH, and then I do a little apostrophe, I guess.
Hyphen?
Hyphen, that's what it is, hyphen, sorry about that. And the last name is Sorenson, which would be Sorenson.
And you said it was Pink
Heaven Photography.
Pink Heaven Photography. So friends out, if you're in the LA area, you moved. So what area are you in right now?
I'm in Lake Elsinore area, okay. So I'm about an hour and a half from LA, and I'm about an hour from San Diego area. So it's kind of I'm in the middle.
So if anybody has anyone and knows anyone that wants to do some photography work or wants someone to take some really good photographs, Alanna's your woman to do that. So thank you for your time today, Alanna, and of course, we'll be in touch because you and I are good friends. So thank you very much. And, listeners, I hope that you have a really good day today, that you can go out and you can be a blossom in somebody's life as well, just like Alanna's been a blossom to me. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time, and I will talk to you soon. God bless you all.
God bless you.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Blossoms of My Life Radio. This program is listener supported. Blossoms of My Life Radio is a 501c3 nonprofit organization. To contact Ramona regarding donations, sharing your God story, or requests about her books, you can write to Ramona Trevino, P.O. Box 22731, Bakersfield, California 93390. That's P.O. Box 22731, Bakersfield, California 93390. Her website is the letter M, dauntless.org. That's iamdauntless.org. Her email is ramona@blossomsofmylife.org. That's ramona@blossomsofmylife.org. This program is a production and sponsored by Blossoms of My Life Radio Ministry and through listeners like you. And in closing, we just want to remind you to remember to see and be a blossom in someone's life.